Hi everybody, I'm TC and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at a legendary Nvidia card from 2016. Yeah, the MSI 1050 Ti. And here it is in a GPU stand on our turntable. As you can see, this card has that fantastic mid-2010s MSI GPU styling. I absolutely love it. It's like a mini version of our GTX 980, except with slightly more LED lighting. As you can see, I've got the 980 in the background there with us. I think they just look really great together as a pair. This card has 4GB of GDDR5 VRAM, full 16 lanes PCI version 3, sadly only 128-bit memory bus, and it's about 75 watts of power. It does have a 6-pin power connector, which is interesting because obviously 75 watts in theory could be powered from the PCI connector alone, but this one has a power connector. Assumedly that's if you want to do some overclocking. We did some in my last video on the RX 460. There should be a link to that here. Yeah, I'm probably not going to do that again. It didn't work out so well last time, so let's give that a miss. On the back, it's got one display port, one HDMI, and one DVI port. Yeah, showing its age there. This card was released towards the end of 2016. Reviews from that time say it was considered a mid-range card. However, I've always thought of this as more of a high-end budget card, as the 1060 and 1070 were, in my opinion, the mid-range of the 10 series, and of course the 1080 was the absolute GOAT. It still is GOATed. That card is amazing. Maybe one day I'll have the budget to get my hand on one for this channel. That would be awesome. But for the moment, we're going to stick with our 1050 Ti. Now, because it's an MSI, it is slightly overclocked from the factory design, as MSI tend to do, and it was apparently priced to compete with AMD's RX 470. However, performance-wise, it was more comparable to the AMD RX 460. Just like any other MSI card from this era, it is incredibly quiet in operation. I mean, I tell you, MSI really used to make some amazing cards. They might still do, I don't know, I don't have the budget for any brand new MSI cards. Right, in the here and now, you can pick up one of these cards for a mere £50 on CEX here in the UK. I imagine eBay prices would be similar, as most things tend to follow the CEX price in here on the second-hand market. That price puts it in direct competition with our GTX 980 4GB, an RX 570 4GB and an RX 580 4GB. It used to be a very good card in terms of price-performance ratio when it was launched, but given the current competition at the price range, it really sounds like this little card has its work cut out for it. Let's see how it fares with our somewhat modern game collection. As always, let's start with The Witcher 3. I can't believe there's going to be an expansion for this game coming out next year. I'm so excited. The Witcher 3 is one of my all-time favourite games. Anyway, as with our RX 460, we're having to run at 720p, as this card really struggles at 1080p. We're running this game with the same settings as always to try and keep things comparable. Essentially, it's the high presets with textures to ultra plus with FSR and quality. I've put the details on the screen right now, so you can all play along at home if you want. Now, I think there's a griffin in White Orchard that needs a paddling. And as we can see, when I'm finished rambling here and beating that griffin, which I'm getting a little bit better at, we're averaging at about 38 FPS according to Mango Hut here. And that's actually a little less than our RX 460 got, which I'm a bit surprised about, considering, you know, where this card was positioned in the market when it launched. Let's see if that's just a one-off or a reoccurring theme. On to the next game. Here we are back with Red Dead Redemption 2. We're running our usual settings, pictures on screen now, but at 720p instead of the normal 1080p. Now, whilst this card can launch Red Dead 2 at 1080p, the average FPS is about 25, which in my book just isn't playable. So I've dropped the resolution to 720p here. As always, we're running the built-in benchmark and showcasing the last scene on the screen here, as it's definitely the most interesting. And we see our lovable rogue Arthur and romping around Saint-Denis. When the benchmark's finished, of course, we are going to see the average FPS for the whole benchmark pop up on the screen there just after Arthur crosses this bridge. And disappointingly, it's showing 31.8 frames per second. Oh dear, let's move on. Stepping back into the world of Cyberpunk, we're going to be running the built-in benchmark using the medium preset with a resolution of 720p. As much like the other games we've seen before, this card just doesn't have the chops for 1080p. We can see once the benchmark is over our average FPS on the screen, and we're going to see it's a somewhat disappointing 37.9. I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to sense a reoccurring theme here. Let's move on. And here we are back with Space Marine 2. As you can see, I'm at somewhat of a later stage in the game than usual. I'm going through my second playthrough. I just love this game so much. It's just so much fun. I really do apologise. There are some spoilers here on the screen in terms of the enemies you will encounter. Yeah, so please skip it if you really don't want to see this right now. This is an excellent fight scene. There's a lot going on. It's really punishing this card. As always, we're running in the lowest setting with FSR unbalanced and at a resolution of 720p with the frame gen off. And as you can see, this card is really struggling with sticking to that 30 FPS average mark. Now, unlike our very early videos with the Dell Optiplex 9020, this is not a CPU problem because we're running our budget build Ryzen 3100 and we know that can deliver good frames per second in this game. So yeah, sadly this card is just not up to it anymore. Okay, it's a shame. Let's move on. Let's look at something else. And now it's time for GTA 5. We're running the Enhanced Edition, and thankfully we can run this at 1080p, which is really a nice relief after all those 720p games. We are running the minimum preset with the FSR set to quality and VSync, of course, off. As you can see from our flyby here, we've got a decent frame rate. I always take the average FPS we see in Mango HUD just after the fuel tanker explodes at the end, and consider that the average for the run. And as you'll see in a second, when the tanker explodes, the figure in Mango HUD there for the average FPS will be 49 FPS, which is a very playable figure, which, you know, hardly surprising considering how old this game is. Right, let's move on. And finally, Rise of the Tomb Raider. We're running the high preset at 1080p with the VSync off. Now, Tomb Raider being an older game doesn't support any FSR or frame gen or any gubbins like that. As you can see, we're running the built-in benchmark, and in a moment when the action stops, we'll see the average overall FPS for the benchmark. It is in fact 57.24. which again is incredibly playable. So far in my testings, Nvidia cards have always worked rather well in Rise of the Tomb Raider, and this one is no exception. So, what's the verdict? A little disappointing, really. I've put a chart together here so we can see our MSI 1050 Ti stacks up against the other cards we've tested so far in our budget gaming PC. Now, all these games and game settings are the same. You'll notice some games here are 720p and some are 1080, they're separate entities. And that's because some cards, such as the 1050 Ti and the RX 460, simply couldn't muster a decent frames per second at 1080p. So you'll notice that we've only got Rise of the Tomb Raider and GTA 5 across all the cards. The other ones, we're just having to compare the 1050 Ti to the RX 460. You know, you can safely assume that the other cards are absolutely dominating them because they're not even in the same, you know, resolution category. Now, if we look over, all these numbers are just not good. Most of the games fall below my own personal magic 40 FPS equals playable line, which for a £50 graphics card is just frankly a bit poor. Our 25 quid RX 460 does overall a better job. Link to that video here. This 1050 Ti clearly has felt the ravages of time. I actually know the complete history of this particular card. This has been with a family member since it was purchased brand new in 2017, so it's actually a little bit sad for me to see it being defeated by modernity so heinously. Luckily, though, it's still a looker. As I've said many a time, this particular era of MSI, I think they're amazing. So this card will enjoy sitting in my display cabinet for everybody to see because I believe it's earned that place. Now, one thing to point out, the keyed eye among you will have noticed I haven't included any footage here of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. And that's because this card does not have hardware ray tracing, and of course it is not an AMD card, so we can't simply set the setting to emulate it. I really hope you like the new introduction and the new branding. Just something I'm trying out. I personally think it's a bit nicer, but please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, well, I think that's about all the time we got today. Please join me next time where I'll be discussing how I ended up as a Linux desktop user and, for your own entertainment, demonstrating some simple tasks in Linux versus Windows. Yeah, that should be something interesting. So that is about time to wrap it up here. That's all I've got time for today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and join me, TC, for another ramble really soon.